He came for a debate. She brought a courtroom. When Richard Gere faced Pam Bondi on live TV, he expected applause. What he got instead was the trial of his life, and the nation watched. The network billed it like a cultural Super Bowl. America at the crossroads, culture meets constitution. Richard Gere. Pam Bondi. 2 podiums. 1 stage. A nation watching. Gere arrived first. Poised. Polished. Dressed in slate gray and soft smiles. His team briefed him like a diplomat. Lead with peace. De-escalate. Don't get baited. He nodded, sipping green tea backstage. Pam Bondi came in alone. No entourage. No preamble. Just a cross around her neck and a folder of court rulings tucked under one arm. The show's graphics were loud, flags waving, bold fonts pulsing on screen. But once the lights dimmed, the air thickened with something quieter. Expectation. Maybe even dread. The moderator posed the first question to Gere. What does America need right now? America needs to soften. Gere began. We're losing touch with our shared humanity. It's time to turn outward, to empathy, to global unity. The applause was warm. The left side of the audience smiled, relieved. Then the moderator turned to Pam. She didn't smile. She leaned slightly forward, voice level. Richard, she said, you talk about unity while ignoring the pain next door. Try telling a mom in Kansas that her duty is to feel for the world when she can't feed her kids. The shift was immediate. Gere adjusted his collar, chuckling politely. I've walked refugee camps. Held dying children in my arms. Pam cut in. And I've walked courtrooms with families who lost their kids to fentanyl. While your global compassion funded the policies that let it in. Gasps from the audience. Gere blinked. The moderator raised a hand, too late. The tone had changed. Pam's fingers tapped the edge of her podium. This isn't a film set, Richard. This is a courtroom. And I came with evidence. On the screens, clips from past debates appeared. Gere meditating, Gere on late-night TV. Then, Pam in court, cross around her neck, her voice clipped, citing case law to a judge. The contrast was brutal. By the first commercial break, hashtags were already trending. Hashtag Pam vs. Gere. Hashtag compassion meets constitution. Hashtag script versus statute. Even CNN flashed a lower third. Bondi strikes first, debate takes sharp turn. In the green room, Gere's aides whispered. He needs to pivot. But the stage had already been redrawn. Gere hadn't walked into a debate. He'd walked into cross-examination. By the second segment, Richard Gere looked less like a legend and more like a man trying to remember which way was up. He spoke in practiced cadences, hands moving with theatrical softness. We must move from fear to empathy, he said. From division to unity. But Pam Bondi wasn't nodding. She wasn't even looking at him. She was flipping through her folder. When her turn came, she spoke like she was giving a deposition. Mr. Gere wants to talk about unity. So let's talk facts, she said. 2.5 million illegal crossings last year. 30% of fentanyl-related deaths tied to border breaches. Human trafficking, at a record high. The numbers landed with a thud. Pam paused. Then added, those aren't statistics. Those are funerals. The audience shifted. TikTok lit up. One user clipped the line and added courtroom music behind it. 80,000 likes in 15 minutes. Gere tried to steady himself. Numbers don't define us, he replied. Spirit does. And when we forget compassion. Pam cut him off. Not loud. Just surgical. Then why do you run from stats like they're paparazzi? Laughter. Then applause. She didn't wait for the moderator. This, she said, lifting her necklace, is the same cross a judge tried to find me for wearing. I stood my ground. I cited Tinker versus Des Moines and West Virginia versus Barnett. And he folded. Gasps. Again. I defend the First Amendment in courtrooms. Not just on stage. What have you defended, Richard? A press release? Behind the scenes, Gere's team frantically texted producers. Pivot. Climate? Race? Go emotional. But the moment was gone. A chant started in the back row. Pam! 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 The moderator tried to regain control. Let's keep things civil. Pam ignored him. You want to talk about symbols, Richard? Let's talk about your scarf and slogan version of activism. You preach unity on red carpets and call patriotism divisive. Gere's composure cracked. That's not true, he snapped. You use faith to justify cruelty. Pam didn't blink. I use it to justify courage. The silence after that wasn't dead air. It was live wire electricity. Even CNN analysts shifted in their chairs. One muttered, "She's not just debating. She's indicting." That clip hit Twitter like a bomb. "She's cross-examining the culture." Trending within the hour. Pam turned back to the camera. Calm. Cold. Ready. You don't get to erase faith by calling it old-fashioned. And you don't get to define cruelty when you've never had to prosecute it. In that moment, the debate ceased to be a format. It became a forum. Not of equals, but of opposing realities. And one of them was losing altitude, fast. Richard Gere stood frozen, not by fear, but by unfamiliar terrain. He had faced red carpets, activist panels, even hostile governments. But not this. Not a public dismantling wrapped in legal precedent. You keep saying America needs healing, Pam said, voice even, heels echoing as she began pacing. But healing doesn't come from guilt-tripping people for loving their flag. It comes from truth. And truth has a backbone. Applause. Again. Not frenzied. Just firm. Gere tried to pivot. You sound like a talking point machine, he said, voice low. Do you even believe this, or is it just what keeps you trending? Pam stopped cold. She laughed. I trend because I tell the truth, she replied. You trend when people forget you're still alive. The audience erupted. The moderator winced. Even producers backstage flinched. The camera cut to Gere's face, flushed still, clenching his jaw as if bracing for impact. He snapped. You're Trump's mouthpiece. He spat. A pawn. Pam didn't look away. You think calling me a pawn makes you brave? I've stood before corrupt judges, crooked prosecutors, and career bureaucrats who all tried to shut me down. I'm still standing. A quiet, damn, could be heard off camera. Pam stepped forward, each word sharper than the last. You're just an actor. And tonight the curtain's falling. On social media, that clip went atomic. Instagram Reels played it with slow zooms. TikTok layered it with gavel sounds. On X, Pam Bondi just turned a debate into a closing argument. #CurtainCallGere. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Gere's team was unraveling. A text leaked. We should have prepped legal angles. He's losing the room. Get him off the stage. But there was no exit. No script to follow. And no edit button. Pam kept going. You call what I do cruel? Try sitting across from a mother whose daughter was trafficked because border policy got softened to win headlines. Gere tried to interject. That's not fair. Pam didn't stop. Fair isn't the issue. Reality is. You want a world run on feelings. I want one run on facts. The camera lingered on the crowd, faces focused, some stunned, some quietly nodding. By the final break, it was no longer a debate. It was a collapse. Pam didn't just win the exchange. She altered the dynamic. And Gere? He wasn't fighting for points anymore. He was fighting for relevance. When the broadcast resumed, the mood was unmistakably different. Gone was the anticipation of a spirited exchange. In its place, something colder. More procedural. Gere no longer addressed Pam. He answered the moderator with clipped formality, his voice distant, as if observing himself from a distance. Pam, by contrast, looked unchanged. Still calm, assured. Like a closing statement was coming, and everyone in the room knew it. The moderator asked a final question. What role should culture play in shaping policy? Gere exhaled. Culture is who we are. It's not just movies. It's stories. It's meaning. If we abandon it, if we abandon compassion, then policy becomes machinery. Some in the audience nodded. It was a thoughtful point. Earnest even. But in the air, a sense lingered. He was trying to resurface. And the tide had turned. Pam waited. Then spoke, deliberately. Culture should never outrank law. It can inspire. It can question. But it cannot replace. She turned to Gere. And for too long, people like you, actors, artists, spokespeople, have tried to turn sentiment into statute. It doesn't work. No applause this time. Just silence. A deeper silence. Agreement masked as tension. Pam reached into her folder one last time, pulling out a single document. This is the Arizona ruling that confirmed public officials cannot be penalized for expressions of faith, even when in uniform. Why does that matter? She held it up. Because I wore this cross, she said, lifting the necklace again. And a judge tried to fine me for it. I cited case law. He backed down. Gere looked down. You say I'm cruel, Pam said. I say I'm consistent. The moderator gave a weak thank you, eyes darting to the producer's box for a cue. The show was over. But the story wasn't. Within minutes, clips flooded online. Political influencers, left and right, posted reactions. A conservative commentator tweeted, Pam didn't debate. She prosecuted. A liberal journalist replied. Gere looked like he was caught mid-script. The contrast played on a loop, Pam with citations. Gere with metaphors. Pam still. Gere animated. On TikTok, users stitched together courtroom footage of Pam's earlier confrontation with Judge King. The same cross. The same calm voice. That, now, was the origin story. Merchandise appeared within hours. Mugs with, "This isn't jewelry. It's evidence." T-shirts printed with, "Culture can't outrank law." Pam didn't post anything. She didn't need to. Cable segments ran all night. Some praised her composure. Others questioned the spectacle. But no one denied what had happened. A shift had occurred. Not in votes. Not yet. But in tone. In posture. Pam had walked in as a former prosecutor. She walked out as something larger. A symbol of controlled fury. And Richard Gere? He left with applause. But none of it was for him. By morning, it was no longer a debate story. It was a cultural rupture. A reckoning with fame, politics, and the fine print of the Constitution. Pam Bondi's name surged to the top of Google Trends. Not just in Florida, not just among conservatives, but nationally. Middle America, college campuses, even liberal enclaves. The clips were inescapable. A 19-year-old TikToker in Nebraska posted a side-by-side, Gere on a podcast in soft lighting, murmuring about compassion, Pam, in the debate, holding up her cross, voice like a blade. Caption. Light doesn't scare the powerful. Heat does. Hashtag Pam 2028-inch. It hit 2 million views by noon. Meanwhile, Richard Gere's PR team scrambled. They issued a carefully worded statement. Mr. Gere remains committed to peace, global compassion, and meaningful dialogue, and regrets that last night's exchange did not reflect the tone he had hoped for. It was meant to cool things down. It did the opposite. The top reply on X read, "You got out-argued, not out-yelled." And then the president weighed in. Trump's post went live at 10:42 a.m. Pam Bondi didn't debate. She taught. And Hollywood learned the hard way. She's fearless. She's America. 1.3 million likes in 5 hours. Fox News ran it nonstop. Newsmax followed with the churn. Bam! Bondi bombshell blasts Gere. Even MSNBC couldn't ignore it. A panel segment grew testy as one host admitted. You don't have to like her politics to admit she controlled the room. Meanwhile, Gere canceled his remaining media hits. His team floated a compassion montage video, clips of him hugging monks, barefoot in refugee camps, smiling with orphans. The comment section turned brutal. This isn't Tibet. This is America. And you got buried. Pam lives rent-free in your press strategy. You walked in with a scarf. She walked in with statutes. Then came the merchandise. By 3 p.m., conservative influencers were wearing shirts reading, "Script is not equal to reality. I came to prosecute. This cross is constitutional." Pam's team wasn't behind any of it. America was. In Texas, a high school hosted a Bondi breakdown watch party. Over 400 students packed into a gym to rewatch the moment she told Gere, "You trend when people forget you're still alive." A state rep in Ohio cited her during a floor debate on immigration. And outside the Florida courthouse where she once clashed with Judge Kane, someone spray-painted, "Faith fights back." It was clean by noon. But the image had already gone viral. The cultural divide wasn't new. But for one night, it had a face. A tone. A cross that refused to be silenced. And the man who once played America's romantic conscience? He had become a case study in what happens when narrative meets evidence, and loses. By day 3, the aftershocks of the debate still hadn't subsided. Newsrooms couldn't move on. Talk radio ran clips of Pam Bondi like they were dispatches from a front line. Panel shows, left and right, replayed the moment she lifted her cross and said, "I use it to justify courage." What began as a one-night debate had metastasized into a cultural autopsy. Pam didn't give interviews. She gave statements, short, clipped, and legally sound. When Fox News pressed for an exclusive, she declined. When CNN offered a segment to clarify her tone, she declined again. "I didn't go in to fight a celebrity," she eventually said in a 2-minute recorded video. "I went in to defend the Constitution. That was it." 2 sentences. And it hit like a gavel. Back in Hollywood, damage control turned to image repair. Gere's agent tried to book him on a network morning show. They prepped gentle questions, a studio lit in warm tones. The segment was cancelled an hour before air. Insiders leaked that Gere had refused pre-show rehearsals. That he was demoralized, caught off guard, not ready for the force she brought. He wasn't alone. GOP strategists saw an opening. Polling groups ran overnight surveys. Would you support Pam Bondi for Senate? Would you vote for her over an incumbent? Numbers came back higher than expected. Among independents? Off the charts. She hadn't announced anything. But she didn't have to. In Florida, a PAC filed paperwork titled Constitutional Courage 2026. A separate supercut went viral, a montage of her takedowns, courtroom clips, and that single line. "You don't get to erase faith with feelings." It played over American flags, silent courthouses, and grainy footage of crowded border crossings. College students quoted her in debate teams. Conservative clubs played her clips at orientation. A Gen Z podcast titled an episode, "Pam Bondi is the anti-influencer." She didn't trend by design. She trended by outcome. Even progressive voices began to fracture. One Substack essay read, "Pam Bondi didn't just expose Gere. She exposed how lazy we've become in relying on sentiment over structure." She came with law. He came with legend. And legend lost. By the end of the week, her image, Bondi, chin slightly raised, cross glinting, was muraled on the side of a gun store in Missouri. She didn't ask for it. But she didn't paint over it either. 2 weeks later, the story still hadn't vanished. Richard Gere had. His team issued a final statement, measured, vague, forgettable. "Mr. Gere is taking time to reflect." His Instagram went dark. His foundation paused its updates. His scheduled documentary screening in Santa Barbara was postponed indefinitely. The debate hadn't just bruised his image. It hollowed it out. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi kept moving, quietly, methodically. No rally tours. No declarations. But footage surfaced of her meeting with veterans in Sarasota. Visiting a courthouse in Des Moines. Speaking not in headlines but in paragraphs. At a fundraiser in Florida, she finally broke her silence in person. No fanfare. Just a room of 200 people, a flag behind her, and a podium with a simple placard. Faith. Law. Country. She recounted her experience facing down biased judges, political retaliation, and viral scrutiny. Then, her tone shifted. "I didn't defeat a man," she said, gaze level. "I defeated the illusion that Hollywood speaks for America." There was no roar. Just rising, deliberate applause, like the closing of a verdict. On social media, the moment exploded again. A 12-year-old girl posted a TikTok pointing to her gold necklace, saying, "This isn't jewelry. It's my shield." Fox and Friends called it the Bondi effect. Gere's team attempted a soft pivot, releasing a compilation of his past humanitarian speeches under the hashtag he had heart. It didn't land. The top comment, "She had heat. And America picked her." Even inside Democratic circles, discussions shifted. A staffer leaked a memo warning, "Never underestimate courtroom language in cultural arenas. The next debate won't be one with warmth." Late one night, Pam posted a single photo. She stood in front of a folded American flag, holding her cross, not dramatically, just naturally, like something worn, not wielded. Caption: "Let the elites write scripts. I'll keep writing truth." 1.5 million likes in under 12 hours. She never said the word run. Not once. But the signs multiplied. Stickers. Murals. Homemade shirts reading, "You came to perform. I came to prosecute." Script is not equal to reality. And in Washington, a shift no one could ignore. Senators referenced her debate in floor speeches. Talk radio played her lines on loop. Young voters quoted her in debate tournaments. One even tattooed her closing line on her forearm. Back in Malibu, Richard Gere's compound remained quiet. A security camera captured a delivery. Someone had mailed him a mug. Across it, in sharp serif letters, "This isn't a movie, Richard." And beneath it, in smaller print, "The script is reality." Pam Bondi hadn't just won a debate. She hadn't even just won a cultural battle. She had authored a turning point. No music. No edits. No closing credits. Just silence. And the unmistakable sound of a page turning in American history. A page she wrote, in law, not ink.